Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the CyberCNS partner call. And we will get started here in about 2 minutes, 3 past the hour. Great to have everybody with us. Shiva, how are you?
Very good, Andrew.
Great to see you. Hey, Shiva, can I have screen sharing just for a moment to show everybody something that's really interesting that came out from CISA?
Yep.
Perfect. You're going to like this, Shiva. Greetings, everybody. All right. All right, Shiva, it's 3 past. I'm going to kick things off. That's okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Andrew Morgan here, helping the CyberCNS team on the go-to-market. If you're new to the call, welcome, and it's great to have you with us. We've been doing this, Shiva, for over 2 years. Hard to believe, isn't it?
Yep. It feels like yesterday. Yep.
I know. And we've got guys like Tim with us, and I'm sure there are others, Tim Fournette, Dennis, some others. I'll have to look through the list if I forgot you. I've Larry Gray's out there, who literally have been with us for the whole journey. Adam Robinson, I think, has been with us for the whole journey. Rick Monig. Chris, I think you were pretty close, Sears. Craig Kerrigan. All right, so Adam. And I just want to show you guys something that came out literally hot off the press from our friends at CISA. Have you guys seen this morning? Well, I think it's great as a sales enablement tool to talk to customers and prospects about what you're doing. And if you take a look without reading each part of it, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom and look at the prevent initial compromise, look at what is number 2. Not too shabby, right, Shiva?
Yep. And I can see basically it's the very fundamentals that everybody talks about, right? Like multi-factor authentication, logging, all of those pieces, which I think, honestly speaking, Andrew, like when I started 2 years back, and what I see today is that actually most of the partners basically know what they're doing, and they basically seem to be putting that together in a process. Some people with a lot of tools, some people with a restricted set of tools. But I think while all of these standards are coming out, I believe that most of the folks are beginning to are already there or basically are getting there very shortly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're seeing the maturity come, especially folks on this call. It's great to have you guys, and it's not just the tools, as we know. If you look at the cyber defense matrix, it's the people, process, technology, but the process piece. I'm seeing people, really working on their own internal security, so they have command to go out and have credibility and sell it. So, all right. So the agenda, as always, again, if you're new, Shiva will give an update, a product update, what's new there, what's coming. Open up Q&A right away. I'll keep an eye on chat. I'll interrupt Shiva when I think it's appropriate, and then we'll go full bore Q&A after. So don't think I'm not seeing your questions in chat. I will. I'll go off camera while Shiva shares his screen. So I'll stop sharing, Shiva, and turn it back over to you.
So, Andrew, I hope you can see my screen, right?
We can, Shiva.
Okay, so kind of switched out templates just because basically it was getting a little boring. So but on the key updates, okay, so we are basically finally ready to migrate. We will basically begin the migration on May 13th. So all of your instances will start getting migrated. Starting Monday 16th, you will actually receive an email by on Friday morning, and basically it will talk to you about, on May 16th, you will log in via portal.mycybercns.com, and you will essentially see all the data through that particular portal. And we are going to keep your existing domain active for a few days, and I'll explain the reason for that. That is because essentially the agents that you have in your system today are all homing to the current domain, right? So we believe that it's going to take a few days for all of them to essentially kind of move over and migrate. And basically people may have laptops, other systems, which may get switched on during the course of the week, etc. So in order to take care of all those situations, what we have done is that we've kept kind of the system operating in what is called a replica mode, so that even your current agents, which are basically homing to your current domain, especially from a SaaS perspective, will continue to work during this period of time. And once we essentially see that most of the agents have basically homed out and basically have rehomed to the new portal, and that is something that we are going to present to you in the dashboard itself, saying that how many of the agents have rehomed versus how many have not rehomed. Once we basically see that our benchmark right now is to basically say 90% of the agents have rehomed, we'll send you a mail of which agents are not rehomed. But we will essentially kind of switch off those domains which are there. And that way, what will happen is that everybody will basically come over to the new domain. And we basically will have our teams available during the course of the next, from May 16th through that week, in case you run into any issues, so that we can basically quickly resolve issues. And we're also basically going to put up a separate Slack channel. And my request is that if you can basically throw anything that you get at the Slack channel, then our team will be available to basically answer those questions and basically check if there are any issues, etc. Once we basically finish this process and we are through with next week, then the process of updating your agents to do the whole thing, which I talked about a couple of weeks back, in terms of the real-time agent, which essentially will send updates in real time, and you no longer will need to schedule scans, etc. That essentially will be updated. And those will basically be once we update it to the new DNS. And then, as I said, we'll have dashboards that basically show your migration status, so that you are fully aware of the process of your agent migration, and you can take appropriate steps. And we'll also have mailers to the folks that are there as part of the portal to basically make sure that that gets done. So that's essentially kind of the key update, and that's what the team is working on right now. In the meanwhile, basically we received requests for a few things. So one was basically the support for newer firewalls. So pfSense is there, Untangle is there. I do not know if anybody tried it, and if basically everything is working fine with it, please let us know. So you can essentially add credentials for Untangle, and then it gives you all the details with access rules, licenses. And we had a little bit of a issue with Untangle because they have some vague logic in terms of how they send back rules in the API. It's basically called a fix-up logic, where they essentially, I believe that they try to save space by not sending a few fields, but actually ended up sending more than what it is. But it was a good learning for us to basically look at that whole piece. But this is right now available in all of your instances, and then you get the firewall audit reports. So this and a bunch of other items essentially were resolved, especially on the agent side, and basically minor fixes. All of these have been released. I'm happy to say that I actually got a request to basically change the entire format of the release notes to basically make sure that the latest release notes are up on top, and we made that change today. And as I was going through that, we basically realized that on an average, we're basically making anywhere between a minimum of 3 releases a week and to a maximum of 6 releases a week. So I think we were a lot more agile a couple of months back. Basically, we had a setback this month where we basically haven't had as many releases, but we hope to go back to that once this migration is completed. So that's essentially what we've been working on. The second piece, which is essentially kind of the most important update, is that we analyzed the problems that everybody was facing with the external scan agent. 2 sets of problems that essentially occurred. One is we were running the external scan agent on your machines, which was actually already overloaded. That was part one. But second is also that what was happening is there is throttling of the number of packets that are going out from those instances when you're doing an external scan. So what we are doing right now is to basically set up a separate pool of servers that will essentially kind of so these are essentially being set up as spot instances in AWS. So what essentially happens is, since those are dynamic IPs that are just getting kindled at that particular point of time, it basically does not have a problem in terms of basically sending out traffic. So the main problem is that if the same IP starts sending out too much of traffic, we basically are working with AWS to see if they can essentially give us a pool of whitelisted IP addresses that can do this scanning. I think basically that will probably take a week or 2 for us to kind of completely set up. But in the meanwhile, essentially this pool of servers, which is basically called externalscan.mycybercns.com, will essentially be responsible for doing the external scans. And we basically will be queuing up all the IP addresses to scan from across all of the partner resources, and then performing parallel scans across all of them, and basically pushing the data across. In addition, one of the design changes that we are making, and you folks let me know if this is, we have actually built an engine on top of what is called ZMap. So what we essentially do is, ZMap is something that essentially can scan the entire internet and all the open ports across the internet in 45 minutes, basically, provided you give it enough of hardware. So we have built an engine on top of ZMap where we essentially pull the data on a daily basis. So most of the external scans that we run will basically pull the data from ZMap if it is basically recent, and we will only refresh the data if essentially that you force a scan on it. Otherwise, we'll essentially be able to pull the data from ZMap, which we run on a daily basis, to essentially give you the latest list of what are the ports which are open and what ports are closed, and all of those pieces. Plus, on top of that, we will essentially run all the other pieces, which is banner grabbing and basically looking for vulnerabilities based on the banner grabbing. That is essentially basically being put in place. So you will see a dramatic improvement, especially in the external scan agent piece during this course of this migration, and you will see much better reports. So we'll actually walk you through some of the reports. I will reach out to a few of you to ask if basically I can redact the information and then present those reports, because that would essentially help everybody to see what is the quality of the external scan reports. And then once we finish the migration, we're going to, because as I explained last time, we have a pipeline of items that we've developed, and we basically are pending the releases. So these are essentially the items that are there. One is basically the CIS IG based report. Second is tag based reporting, which also includes classification of assets. So we already are classifying assets, basically saying whether it's a workstation, whether it's a server, whether it's a network device, and who's the vendor, all of those pieces. Third is basically Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus reports. These basically has been pending, but these reports are basically of a different category, because Cyber Essentials basically does not deal with everything at an asset level, but kind of goes a level up in terms of saying, so for example, things like the question it asks is, do you have a firewall in the entire network, and is the firewall configured to meet security standards? So now we have that information, but essentially today, if you look at all of our compliance reports, they're all basically going at asset levels. So we kind of getting help from some people like Tim Golden and others who are helping us kind of redefine these the compliance reports, and basically getting it into shape where it can be understood and also basically actioned upon. So right now, we've given you certain information, but we're not happy with the representation. So we'll actually basically show you some of the representations that we've come up with very shortly after this whole thing. Basically, network device reporting and integrations with password managers, because one of the things that we are noticing recently is essentially like everybody has basically some sort of a password manager or some repository. So if you're able to integrate into that, then the whole burden of trying to enter credentials and scan, etc., basically goes away. We're also working on a new framework for giving you custom reports and dashboards, because we have the ability to now do SQL, which all of you understand. So we'll actually demonstrate a tool next week, which will essentially show you how you can very quickly create dashboards and reports, etc. So that's basically the follow-up items that we're going to basically come up with. From a roadmap perspective, I put out a few items that we are basically putting together, but there are varying opinions on it. And we have a few proposals. One of the things that I wanted to do across the team is to figure out like, how exactly do we do this, right? Because if you look at, there are basically people who feel that we should just stay on course with vulnerability management and do nothing else. There are people who are asking for a broader stack, which basically needs to cater to everything. In vulnerability management, I can be very honest to say that we've basically kind of looked at all the false positives. We're looking at all the reports that are coming in. We are comparing our reports with people like Tenable and others, and we are essentially constantly finding that we have lower false positives. We have a few cases where in some cases we are finding, for example, one of the things that we're doing to improve the detection situation is like if there is items that are left off in the registry, right? So when you uninstall, say, OneDrive, it leaves an entry in the registry. Now, if this entry in the registry exists, then when we basically query the data from OS query, it says that this version of the application is installed, and we provide you with remediations based on that version that is installed. Now, the constant question that comes back is, but I uninstalled it and this folder does not exist, but it's there in your registry. So in order to essentially kind of eliminate this, some of the things that we are essentially going through right now in the writing that we're doing, we are basically going back to the file system, checking if those files actually exist, even though they basically are given to us by OS query. And then we are revalidating whether that is the right information or not, and then essentially presenting that information. So I think with that, we will basically remove a lot of the issues that you're facing around what is technically called false positives, but actually you can see those pieces of information in the registry. Second, we see a lot of issues which come up because when people coming in with roaming profiles, especially on Active Directory, you can see that directories get created which are temporary. And if at the time of scanning those directories are picked up, then essentially you see those things as something that needs to be remediated. But it's the truth also because it was there and at that particular point of time. So the second thing is that when we basically looked at the whole patching piece and we started going down the path of patching, we're seeing a lot of people using it well. One of the concerns that a lot of people are raising is basically the sanctity, that is, you're supposed to be read only, but you're also writing in case of patching. So how do we basically separate this out? So, but one of the ideas that basically we want to throw out is, should we essentially create an agent which is purely read only, which essentially reads the data and then pushes the data back, and optionally basically make available another agent which basically also has patching enabled. So now the patching enabled agent will also do the read only part, but it's an explicit executable that is there. So you never are basically worried in case somebody is worried that, oh, will this basically increase my attack surface because it has the ability to patch, then the other agent is available which does not have the ability to patch, so it cannot basically write to the system. So we will essentially create these executables so that you are in control of what you want to install at a particular client and what you don't want to install at a particular client. The second thing is that we are basically pulling configurations for firewalls, and we are beginning to do this for switches and network devices, because that is basically how we can essentially build up some of the compliances that are required. Now, we can basically pull up information and provide you reports in terms of change detection and tell you that who made what change when on this particular system, right? And that also basically goes along with whatever we're doing with AD audit and audit logs, etc. So that essentially kind of gives you kind of a 360-degree view of all the assets and what are the changes that are occurring across them. This is something that we basically again have put together, but we basically are looking forward for advice from this team to say, should we basically put this together and will it help, or basically do you think we are deviating from the core requirements that we have? Third is basically one of the things that is required as part of the CIS is basically somebody go in and basically say that these assets are approved assets and not approved assets. So we want to essentially provide an interface where you can essentially go in bulk and say these assets are approved and these assets are not approved. And then based on the approval or not approved state, we essentially provide you with reports and all of those pieces. Last but not the least, since we're essentially pulling out information from all of these switches, should we basically probe switches for CDP, LLDP, and the CAM data so that we essentially are able to figure out if there are any assets that, so for example, if you have assets which basically are completely closed out, right, which have no ports open and they basically are taking no traffic inward, but they basically have outbound traffic that's going out, there is no way for us to detect it today. And if we essentially do these probes, we can essentially detect those kinds of devices. Is that something that will add value to the product, or do you think it does not add value to the product? And last but not the least, we have OS query as an engine, and it can be used in a multitude of ways. So we want to essentially see whether we can essentially kind of push more into OS query so that we can essentially get more compliance. Like, for example, Dennis had mentioned before, like file integrity monitoring. So should we basically take a list of files and monitor their integrity and make sure that nobody is changing those files? Is that something that would be okay, not okay to do, is something that we want essentially from this team to essentially say, can we do this? So this is what we wanted to cover.
Before we go on, can we go back? Or okay, new proposal. Yeah. So there's been a lot of chat, but let me just, before we leave this, Shiva, let's just get some, can we just get some gut check here? Tim Fournette, can you come on first?
Sure.
What are your thoughts?
I'm a huge fan of almost all of this. I really like the configuration polls for network devices. I think that's, squarely in the desired feature set for a product like this. File integrity monitoring, I would probably push back on that. I think that's a little bit deeper into detection and response, and I think there may be some resource utilization issues that come up because of it, because you're doing checksums on a lot of files. Other than that, that's really great. Patching being separate is great. making a separate executable and maybe just set that up as a flag for the entire client, whether it's on or not, would be good.
Got it. Good feedback. Mike Miller, no worries that you're new. Are you a Perch or Roost user? I see you mentioning Canny. So
no, like myself, my background is that we had built a platform internally at my old MSP that I had that ended up growing to one of the top 100 in the nation. And we had a platform that we built called NetAptics, and our entire team of 14,000 people, we used Canny internally so that everybody in the team could feedback on this is where we should go. And then somebody would make a suggestion, everybody else could vote on it.
Yeah, it's great idea. Yeah, Shiva, I think that's a great idea, by the way, for us to put in Canny. I know Roost uses it, and Perch did. So thanks for that, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, just a suggestion, because like there's things like this, but it's hard to do these in a webinar, whereas that kind of opens it up to here's some suggestions from everybody. All right, let's vote.
Right. Good stuff.
And then the team internally developing can say, all right, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't.
Yeah.
Then you kind of get everybody's opinion.
Yeah. Good. Shiva, what are your thoughts on that, by the way, putting Canny in?
No, absolutely. See, the point is that I think, as I said, we can do a lot of this stuff. I just wanted to kind of get a pulse of the team, because as I said, like there are a lot of varying thought process. Of course, we can do what everyone is saying, but it is just that I wanted to understand like what is important to everyone and how should we proceed with this whole thing. Because as you said, we've been 2 years, and what we've done in these 2 years is essentially taken the voice of what everyone has said and basically put it in the product, right? So that's essentially kind of the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's great of how you approach things, Shiva, and I think everybody loves it in the community. I just think Mike brings up a good point, because then we can start to prioritize roadmap, and you can kind of get it, multitudes of feedback. Just take one more, Adam, and then we'll move on and let Shiva finish. Adam Robinson, you had a comment.
Only around the multiple agents. I mean, personally, we deploy too many agents as it is to our clients' endpoints. And I fully get the point about separating out read and write, and I do agree with that. But just the thought of having yet another agent to deploy just doesn't sit right. But I guess it's all around security at the end of the day. So if that's the most secure way of doing it, then fine.
So Adam, it's not 2 agents. You will choose between, if you choose the patching agent, it comes with the other piece plus patching. If you choose the agent, which we can call read-only, that will basically just install whatever the read-only agent, right? So it is this or this. It's not both of them. You don't need both of them in case you need patching.
How would you know which agent you'd pushed out?
So you would install it, right? So based on the agent that gets installed, it would essentially report back to the portal and say that I am this version of the agent. I have patching enabled, or I don't have patching enabled.
Okay, I just think, I wonder if trying to keep on top of that, if you've got tens of thousands of endpoints, might become a bit difficult, but I guess we'll have to see how it works.
Yeah,
correct. Because it's just that we wanted to make sure that even from a code perspective, everybody, like today, what happens is that we have one common code base, which basically does the read and write. And one of the concerns that everybody raises is that, okay, if you have the ability to write, then it raises my, it gives me another attack surface. So if that is the concern, then the only way I can see that we can mitigate it is by saying, okay, here is a version that allows patching, here is a version that does not allow patching. So where you have compliance as most important and you don't want any write ability, then use the agent which is basically capable only of read only. And wherever you basically want to have the ability to patch, you install the patching agent. It gives you that functionality as well as the ability to patch. And you can see on the portal whether that agent is enabled for patching or not enabled for patching.
So just quickly, Shiv, I want you to continue, but I caught something that Sean and Craig Kerrigan just said. Sean, can you come on and just talk why, the why about ticketing and like where your thoughts are there?
Sure. Sure. I've actually talked to him in chat a little bit earlier this morning. But like all of my engineers work out of ConnectWise. So like if there's something that we can have that, kind of basically we set up our alerts, for our client, it's a set up and go, and it kind of pushes that information to the ticket in ConnectWise, ideally as an internal note for the resolve items. It can have a normal description or whatever, here's what we found, here's, the evidence or whatever. And then like the actual remediation could be in like a separate, internal note for the engineer to work through. And then like by, two-way, ticket sync. If they close it in ConnectWise, CyberCNS should do a validation and reopen the ticket if it's still present, something like that maybe. I know LionGuard does that for us now. And that's pretty much it. I don't mind the engineers, going into the CyberCNS portal, but we have a lot of, help desk guys that just, they just need to know, okay, I need to update, this version in video or whatever. So.
Got it.
So Mike, two things that we're, yep. So two things that we're doing is that I actually received feedback from Mark and I think Andrew Watasco also on this particular item in terms of especially how we are laying out information inside a ticket. So there are two pieces which we are doing. One is basically changing the structure in which we're putting things into tickets so that it is more concise, precise, and basically in a table format. Unfortunately, the issue that we face, especially with putting data into descriptions, etc., is like, I think a subset of HTML is there. So, but anyway, we're investigating it to see how we can essentially make that look good. Second is that we also basically will very shortly allow you to basically define your own template of what information from this whole asset plus vulnerability, etc., that you want to see as part of the ticket. And you can build your own templates and then we'll push the data based on that template. So these are two changes that we're doing. Immediate change that we are doing right now is to essentially kind of make one. See, the point is that when you want to put all the information about every vulnerability into a ticket, the problem is like a Microsoft may release a patch next month, which will have say 1,200 vulnerabilities. And there is no point in me basically kind of putting all those vulnerabilities out there, but rather basically just saying that this patch, it fixes so many vulnerabilities. And then I'll give you a link which says, these are all the things that are fixed by that. So we will investigate how we can push an HTML attachment, which has all the data along with it, and basically get that resolved with across all the PSAs that are out there.
Okay, Shiva, you want to continue and then we'll go, like, I'll go through all Q&A.
No, this is all the, this was the last slide that I had.
Oh, okay. Okay, fair enough. Wow, Mike, ServiceNow. So you are a big MSP, I'm assuming. Nothing wrong with ServiceNow. Shiva, we've done ServiceNow multiple times in over the years together. Do we have any plans on that? I'll work my way back up, guys, on all the tickets, on all the chat. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we are currently supporting 30,000 end users through multi-tenant ServiceNow.
Got it. Okay.
Supporting 50 different instances of ServiceNow.
How many instances?
50 different instances. So even if we could get it so that all of the ticketing related items go into our core ServiceNow would be awesome. Like I'm working on, as I'm brand new to CyberCNS, I'm currently working on using webhooks to do it, but it'd be great to see it eventually down the road happen as a part of it.
Okay. Shiva, what about our APIs and things like that in terms of what might be able to help Mike?
So we actually, we already had this request from Andrew Atasco to basically move to ServiceNow. So that integration is already built. So we've just not been able to test it out. So I think basically by the end of this month,
I can be your tester.
Sure, if that is the case, then essentially we can get this tested and basically move forward. Not a problem at all.
Mike, I'm sending you my email and putting my email in chat. Can you shoot me an email and we'll get that
Yep.
going?
Actually, I have your email. I'll email you after this.
All right, Mike, thanks. Okay. All right, let me work my way up, everybody. Just be patient. Sean is saying my Sonic walls can't have port 22 open Shiva because of FIPS. Plans on, and while we're talking about FIPS, any plans on FIPS compliance reporting in the future?
Yes, so basically Sonic wall, basically when we tried last time, there was no specific API access available. If I think if we basically want to, if we basically get some API access to Sonic wall, we're happy to change it because we've already done that with the other firewalls. Like for Sophos, we changed it to the API. We are happy to basically change it to the API.
Okay. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Chris here, is that just a comment on patching enabled, or do you want to mention something there? But
yeah, it was just a comment. I
okay.
really want the tool to be read only for our use case. I don't need another thing that can make changes in our client environments.
Got it.
And if it got compromised, I wouldn't want there to be a way for them to push a different agent or update it to where it would enable that functionality, right? I wanted something that only support could turn on for us on the back end.
Okay. Deepak, can we change agents between, can we change between agents through Cloud Push? Thoughts on that, Shiva, or any additional thing you want to say there, Deepak?
Just the only thing, like if we have a lot of clients over there, which are already installed, like they are ready to, they're in a read-only mode and we have to change it. I wanted to do that through cloud. I don't want to reinstall another agent. Like everything should be controlled through cloud. Like who's gonna be, other way around. So that's my point. Like everything we can control, and if there is an agent, there is a server, we should have a connectivity that we can change between any version, or any functionality, instead of having two different agents and confusing ourselves.
So Deepak, the problem is it's a two-way street, right? See, if the agent that you have right now allows you to basically opt in for patching and opt in for this thing, and then it goes over there. Now, when you talk of security, it depends on where you are. Basically, can the agent be weaponized is something that everybody thinks about, right? So the point is that you may say that it's disabled from the cloud, but if somebody were to hack the system, understand the protocol by which the agent can be patching can be enabled on the agent, and then they basically patch it with a piece of malware. How do you prevent that from happening, right? And if it is basically very sensitive. So the only way we can do that is basically to essentially give you an agent which essentially cannot be weaponized. So if you cannot turn on patching using any protocol and cannot use it, then of course, basically you cannot use it. Where you need that functionality, only there you install the agent with the patch enablement, right? So this is basically, so while we take all the precautions and all of the pieces which make sure that you don't, it cannot be weaponized, nobody in this world can give you an absolute guarantee, right? Because even the biggest of companies, basically, they have had these problems. Now, the only thing is that we can help reduce the attack surface by, while it's all control, even if you install an agent which the patch, you can basically switch it off from the cloud. that we give it to you right away. But if you want the next level, which says, I don't even want this to have the ability to be able to execute a command to patch, that is another agent that basically we provide.
So, everywhere we see that there is a patch, management process, and there is a specific window. So within that window, we can switch the agent between, read only to, patching mode, so that it can patch the things, and we can close that out. If it can be scheduled, it can be managed through cloud. We don't have to reinstall, install, we don't have to enable the surface area. All those things which you said will gonna be covered. Thoughts?
Correct. So the point is that if you enable it on the cloud, then that agent will upgrade to that patching agent, or it will downgrade to the read-only agent. But that is something that you can control from the cloud. But what you cannot do is to basically, once it's installed, you cannot do it, right?
Okay.
Okay. Shiva, Larry Gray was asking, can there be two different names, for the agents?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Chris Hurley, was your question addressed, or do you want to come on and ask that about the executable?
I think it pretty much got covered.
Okay. Jerry, any comments you want to make on FIM? Tim mentioned that, and you mentioned a comment.
Yeah. Yes, if you can hear me, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. So from the FIM standpoint, I would, that's something that I really don't want to have to run as standalone products for our clients, and it's included here and there in other products. But frankly, it'd be, from my own selfish standpoint, it'd be pretty awesome to have another option for FIM in CyberCNS, since I'm using it everywhere for what we do. And other customers, they have a smattering of X and a smattering of Y, and FIM can be a difficult problem to solve just because of what their product stacks might look like. But I understand it might need to be its own installer, or I'm not sure what that would look like for how it would fit in to the world here.
Got it. Do you have any comment on that, or just?
So as I said, see, the point is that we can essentially enable FIM, especially because we have OS query on the client, and it basically takes care of the CPU utilization issues, etc., because they've kind of perfected it over a period of time. So the point is that the feature is there. And we will basically, what I'm hearing based on what people like Dennis, etc., are saying, we'll make it available in case you want to choose to use it. You choose it to use it. If you choose not to use it, absolutely fine. And it's an opt-in, right? You want to use it, perfect. You don't want to use it, no problem, right? So I think that would help everyone. And again, since this is a read-only system, it does not basically hurt anybody in terms of increasing the attack surface. If anything, it basically becomes something that you get additional information from the system, which you were not getting today.
Got it. Adam, you made a comment on audit functionality. Do you want to make a comment there?
Yeah, hello everyone. So I know in the past I've brought up the potential option of having maybe a custom audit file import capability, but even from a simpler level, if we can't get to that point, I would imagine the ability to maybe define like a custom audit rule where you can give it maybe a name, a description, give it a registry key and value name, and then have it check the value when any of the types of agent scans, a lightweight agent, the scan runs, it not only does all of the baked in audits, but it also imports your custom audit list. And I'm just trying to think of an example. Like, let's say you wanted to, find out if the Chrome password manager is enabled and it's in a registry setting. So I can go in and define like a custom audit rule that says, pull the value of that registry value on my next scan. And it'll actually give me the ability to audit against things that are not predefined in the system. Does that make sense?
Yep, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think what we will do is we'll enable a user interface where you can basically check for registry files or basically any other settings in the system, and basically make it available within the within our database to say what is the value. I think that would help everyone. And if basically you create something that's cool, then I will see whether we can basically create the ability for you to share with everyone too. So.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I just thinking it, instead of having to depend on your team to always be making sure that we're, all of the current compliance checks are accurate and making sure that, you're covering all bases. If we can have the ability to extend and customize the functionality, I just think it'll make the whole product more valuable.
Understood.
Thanks, Adam, for that. Dennis, you made a few comments on agents. Do you want to come on?
Yeah, I was just wondering, number one, whether the URL for the download for the agent is going to change, because we actually push out we provide copies of the PowerShell and also a batch script for install to our clients, and those would have to be updated if that URL is going to change. And also, I wanted to make a little comment on the idea about agents, because we've done a fair amount of testing on the resource usage of scans versus agents. And what I'm telling my clients is lightweight agents actually are lower load on the endpoint and lower traffic. The reason being, when you run a scan, an authenticated scan, that scanner has to go out and basically hit every one of those endpoints, install the lightweight agent, pull the information back, delete the lightweight agent, and that happens all within the scan window, which is a lot more resource intensive on the endpoint and also on network traffic. So I actually think that installing lightweight agents, although I understand the concern and clients have had concerns about how many agents are being installed, in the end, it actually is not only more secure, but it's actually less load on the endpoint and less load on the traffic. Now that assumes that if you have a lightweight agent installed, the scanner does not scan that endpoint anyway. And Shiva can probably comment a little bit more on that. But that's my perspective on agents versus authenticated scans.
I agree with you, Dennis, especially when you're talking about like endpoints. It makes absolute sense to have lightweight agents on the endpoints, because we have basically seen, like, especially when you start doing SMB copies, and if you just imagine that if you have 100 machines, you're essentially copying 100 into whatever size of the executable, right? Even if it is like 5 MB, 6 MB, it's like 500 MB basically just getting transported on the network for no reason at all. However, basically, if you did a one-time push and basically it kind of ran these scans, then you don't need that. And the probe, all it needs to do is to know all these machines have the lightweight agent, so it would not scan them. It would focus on scanning just the network and basically giving you back network-wide vulnerabilities.
I think it's a little bit of a lesser of two evils, but I think having the agents is significantly less, like I said, less load on both the endpoint and the network than trying to do authenticated scans.
Okay. There's a lot of chat here. Just want to see. So in the chat going on, between Tim, Chris, Mark, Dan, Robert, anyone wanna? Is there anything that in that chat that you guys want to bring up, or should I continue down?
I want to know if everybody is okay with us basically backing up configurations. We'll of course basically encrypt all the configurations and give differences for the configurations, but is there anything that we need to be aware of basically from a configuration perspective and backing up a configuration perspective? Anybody has concerns with that?
So Shiva, you're suggesting we do config backups?
Yes. because I am having to parse all the configs, especially when you look at CIS for the network devices, etc., that are coming out right now. You have to essentially parse the config to figure out, and we are already doing it, for example, for the firewalls, right? So we kind of going through all the rules, parsing the rules, and figuring out like what rules are open, not. We have to do the same for switches and routers, because while we can do all the endpoint protection, if your router or switch gets compromised, then it does not make any sense, because then I can take over your entire network, right? So right now, a lot of people focus on the endpoint, but basically very soon the network will become the point of inflection, where basically people will start putting in things. And as you get, because if you look at the Cisco ASA itself, right, they've had maximum number of vulnerabilities, especially with their web view that they basically provide. So how exactly can we essentially bring down that is basically what we are thinking about.
I have a couple of points about that for you, Shiva. One is, I understand that the agent, when you set it up as a probe, that's what logs into the switch. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so are we storing the credentials for the switch permanently on that probe, or is it only pushed in at the time of the scan?
Only pushed in at the time of the scan.
Okay, good. And then my other point was, I'd really love to see you guys be able to attack CIS control 1.4 for DHCP logging, because I think that's a good way to keep our asset list within compliance of CIS. And so I want to make sure that we grab that from your routers or switches as well.
Yes, we are grabbing that, Tim.
Awesome.
Shiva, so if you're doing that, would you foresee the ability to do a restore from that? Like back in the day when I know you built a network management platform and you could do those types of things. Do you foresee that as well at some point?
Not immediately, Andrew, but what I'm looking at is first, let's basically get the configuration, show people changes, etc. Just as with patching, we'll have a set of people who will probably want that functionality at that point of time. And I will leave it to the wisdom of the community to say whether we should basically incorporate it or not incorporate it.
Got it. Okay. Interested in separate agent. Okay. Some comments. Chris, you were asking about CyberCNS SOC ISO compliance efforts. Oh, like how's that coming along?
Yeah, that's it. I saw on the website, it looked like it said in the final stages. So I'm just interested to know if there's any update on that.
Do you have any, how are we doing with our SOC?
We've basically gone back and forth 3 times in terms of making minor tweaks and changes. We're just waiting for the final certification to come through.
Got it.
Awesome.
Good. Okay. 7 minutes pending to the top of the hour. Anybody have anything?
I had a question I asked earlier, but I forgot about, is the URL for the API going to be changing, and is it consistent to everybody now?
Yes, it will basically be portal.mycybercns.com and then the /API. So everything else will work, just that the host name will change. But the old one will also work, as I said, for the next for 3 to 4 weeks till all the agents home back. But after that, it will basically, you'll have to migrate after that.
Okay, thanks.
So this is Dennis. I have a comment on the idea of these, agents that have write capabilities, updates, and so on versus read only. Seems to me if you opt in for the write agent, the one that has the ability to make changes, it would be able to basically switch agent versions, go from a probe to a lightweight agent, or to switch back and forth. You could maybe send commands from the dashboard to those agents to make changes. However, if you opt for the read only, that's basically a dead end. Once you install that agent, the only way you can change it would be to reinstall. Does that seem right, Shiva?
That's correct, Dennis.
So I think that kind of answers a lot of those concerns and questions about, some people are going to want to have the capabilities to have more flexibility, whereas others, for compliance reasons, might need to have read only. Seems like that kind of answers both of those concerns.
Got it. Shiva, Mike is asking about on-prem and will the new
No, they'll have
functionality.
they'll have the updated code, but they don't go back to the portal.mycyberCNS because they basically are on their domain, and they can basically, if they want their own domain to be created, they can basically send us the request. We'll change the domain name for them. So
Great. All right. Well, Shiva, fantastic job. Do you envision a partner call next week with
Yes.
all the updates?
yes, I do. I just have one 30-second thing that I just forgot about. I'm just going to share my screen. So just wanted to say, like, on Monday, basically just so that everybody is aware, that this is how basically the portal is going to look like. So when you actually log in, it's going to ask you for your domain name. So you have your current domain, right? Whether it's basically XYZ or whatever it is, like with this thing. So you just enter this domain name there, right? And then you say sign in, and then it takes you to the login page for your domain. So that's basically the only change. Earlier, you would basically just say login and you would go away. But now it is basically you have to give us that domain name because we need to know from where you're coming. That's the only change that basically you will see.
Got it. Really cool. Looks great, Shiva. All right. I think that does it, Shiva, as I look at everything. Anybody have any last thing? I agree, Chris. Real exciting. Shiva, awesome job for the team members that you have on the call. Awesome job as always. Prashali's out there, Swami, Shri, fantastic work. So we'll wrap it up there, Shiva. We'll see everybody next Wednesday, and everybody have a fantastic week. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. Shiva, take care.
Thank you all.